Amanda Reynolds had spent 3 years visiting her mother's grave, believing she was gone forever until a homeless teenager stopped her beside the headstone and said the impossible. "Your mom is alive. I saw her at a care home in West Hollywood." At first, Amanda thought he was running some kind of scam, but the boy knew a detail only family could know, one that shattered everything she believed, and in that moment, doubt began to replace grief. Amanda Reynolds had become almost ritualistic in the way she visited Forest Lawn every Sunday morning, a routine that had grown so automatic she no longer questioned why she clung to it so tightly. For 3 long years she had driven the same route from her penthouse in downtown Los Angeles, turning onto the winding cemetery road before the sun fully rose, always carrying a bouquet of white lilies, her mother's favorite. That quiet hour before the city woke up had become the only space where she allowed herself to feel everything she spent the rest of the week burying under board meetings, investor calls, and the constant grind of running a billion-dollar tech company. It was the only place where the image of her mother, Margaret Reynolds, wasn't replaced by the grief, twisted version the hospital had described but never showed her. Amanda would kneel by the polished marble headstone engraved with her mother's name, trace the birth and death dates with her fingertips, and tell herself that this was healing, that accepting loss meant visiting the place where loss lived. She told herself that every week, even when her chest tightened so painfully she could barely breathe. Most Sundays passed the same way: soft footsteps on wet grass, the faint hum of traffic in the distance, the muted colors of Los Angeles dawn stretching over the hills. Amanda always arrived early enough that she rarely saw anyone else wandering the cemetery. That solitude suited her. She preferred when no one watched her unravel. Today was supposed to be another one of those mornings. She parked her Tesla beneath the same eucalyptus tree, grabbed the lilies from the passenger seat, and walked the familiar path toward her mother's grave. Her heels sank slightly into the damp earth, and she breathed in the crisp autumn air, letting it cool the restless thoughts that had kept her awake half the night. It was approaching the 3-year anniversary of her mother's passing, and grief had a way of sharpening around anniversaries' growing edges where it used to be dull. Amanda had been feeling those edges for days. She knelt down as she always did, brushing a fallen leaf off the marble and resting the bouquet at its base. "Hi, Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking as it often did on that line. She didn't speak to anyone else in the world like that, with that raw softness, stripped of all the armor her career required. Only her mother had ever seen the version of her without polish, without fear, without performance. Losing her had meant losing the last tie to a younger, braver version of herself. And that loss was something Amanda still didn't know how to rebuild from. She stayed like that for a long moment, staring at the engraved letters as if they held answers she had forgotten how to ask for. It didn't matter how many years had passed, the ache never faded. She could raise millions in funding, negotiate international contracts, lead thousands of employees, but she could not negotiate away the loneliness of standing at her mother's grave. She reached out and touched the cool stone, grounding herself in the ritual she had memorized. But that fragile calm shattered when she sensed movement behind her. Footsteps, light, hesitant, uneven, approached from the walkway. Amanda stiffened. Visitors rarely came this early, and even when they did, they didn't approach her. She cleared her throat, ready to politely ask for privacy. But before she could stand, a young male voice spoke. Miss Reynolds." The sound of her last name jolted her. Amanda turned sharply and saw a teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16, standing a few yards away. He wore an oversized hoodie with frayed sleeves, jeans torn not by fashion but by living, and sneakers so worn the soles seemed barely attached. His hair was messy, his face smudged with dirt, and he held a plastic grocery bag with everything he probably owned. But his eyes, wide, brown, intensely focused, were startlingly alert. "Yes," Amanda asked, straightening, instinctively cautious. "Do I know you?" The boy swallowed hard, his hands tightening around the handles of the bag. "No, ma'am. But I know her." He nodded toward the headstone, and the tremor in his voice made Amanda's skin prickle. Her grief immediately flared into irritation. She had dealt with enough scams in law to recognize when someone was about to ask for money. And the cemetery wasn't the place she wanted to entertain that. "Listen, if you're looking for..." "I'm not asking for anything," he interrupted quickly. I'm here because you need to know the truth. He hesitated, stepping closer. Your mom isn't dead. Amanda stared at him, her mind going blank, then hot with anger. Excuse me. He held his ground despite the fear flickering in his eyes. She's alive. I saw her. I've talked to her. Amanda stood completely still, the world tightening into a sharp, disbelieving point. That's enough, she snapped. Whatever story you're about to tell, don't. This is cruel. I swear I'm not lying, the boy insisted, voice rising with urgency. Her name is Margaret Reynolds. She's at Sunset Hills Care Home, over in West Hollywood. She cries for you every night. Something inside Amanda twisted violently. She opened her mouth to shut him down again, but the boy quickly added, she wears a pearl necklace. 2 strands, you gave it to her on her birthday, right? Amanda felt her breath stop. The necklace, her mother's prized possession, was something Margaret cherished more than anything Amanda had ever bought her. They had celebrated that birthday together, just the two of them, sharing cake in the tiny apartment Amanda grew up in long before success entered her life. She hadn't spoken about that necklace to anyone outside her wife and her mother. There was no way this boy could know about it. For the first time in 3 years, Amanda felt the ground beneath her shift in a way that wasn't grief, but something far more destabilizing: doubt. Not small, fleeting doubt, but deep, visceral, terrifying doubt. The boy took a shaky breath. She's alive, Miss Reynolds. I'm telling the truth. Please just go see her. Amanda stared at him, unable to speak, unable to breathe, unable to make sense of the impossible fracture forming through everything she thought she knew. 3 years of mourning, 3 years of tears, 3 years of visiting a grave that, suddenly, might not belong to her mother at all. And in that instant, Amanda understood that her life was about to split into 2 parts, the years she believed her mother was dead, and whatever came after this moment, whatever truth she was about to uncover. Amanda didn't remember standing up, but suddenly she was on her feet, her heart pounding so loudly she could hear the blood rushing in her ears. Her mind rejected everything the boy had said. Yet the detail about the pearl necklace kept looping through her thoughts like a thread she couldn't untangle. She stared at him, trying to decide whether he was delusional, manipulative, or somehow telling the truth. How do you know about that necklace? She demanded, but the words came out softer than she intended, more shaken than angry. The boy shrugged helplessly. Because she wears it. Every day. It's the only thing she never takes off. She told me it was from her daughter, from you. Amanda's jaw tightened as something sharp pricked the back of her throat. She swallowed it down. That's impossible. My mother was cremated. There was a funeral. Her voice trembled, and she cursed herself for it. The boy took a hesitant step closer, though not recklessly, like someone used to approaching people who might lash out. But you didn't see her, right? They didn't let you see her body. Amanda felt herself recoil as if he had slapped her. She hadn't realized how deeply that memory was buried until he unearthed it with that single question. Evelyn, her wife at the time, had insisted on a closed casket. Claimed the stroke had left Margaret unrecognizable. Claimed it was kinder for Amanda to remember her mother the way she was. At the time, Amanda had been too numb, too grief-stricken, too exhausted from the flight home and the crushing news to argue. She had accepted Evelyn's explanation because Evelyn had always handled logistics well. Because Amanda trusted her. Or thought she did. You reconfused, Amanda muttered, but the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her. Or lying. Or repeating something someone else told you. The boy shook his head. I'm not lying, Miss Reynolds, I swear. I stay near the back entrance of Sunset Hills sometimes. The staff doesn't like it, but it's safer than the streets at night. That's how I met her. She talked to me through the fence sometimes. Told me stories, told me about you. Amanda's pulse skittered painfully when he added, she misses you every day. Something inside her splintered. She couldn't bring herself to fully believe him, but she couldn't dismiss him either. The world around them seemed to hold still, as though even the quiet Los Angeles morning was waiting for her next move. The boy, noticing the shift in her expression, softened his voice. Look, I know how this sounds. I know you think I'm doing some scam, but I'm not asking you for money. I'm just asking you to check. He dug into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out a crumpled visitor tag from the care home. This is where she is, room 2214. If I'm lying, you'll know in 5 minutes. Amanda took the paper reluctantly, her fingers brushing the worn plastic. Sunset Hills Care Home. She had driven past that place 100 times without ever imagining her mother might be inside. The idea lodged under her ribs like something jagged. "Why tell me now?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "Why wait 3 years?" The boy's shoulders hunched. "I didn't know who you were before. She never told me your last name. She just called you Amanda. You'd be surprised how many Amandas there are in Lela." In spite of herself, a strained laugh nearly escaped her. He continued, "But last week I found this." He reached into his bag and pulled out a discarded magazine, one with Amanda on the cover for a Forbes feature about women in tech. Her name was printed in bold beneath her photo. "I recognized you," the boy said. "The smile, the eyes. You look like her." Amanda stared at the magazine as the world wavered around her. Even she could see it, the faint resemblance between her and Margaret. The same jawline, the same quiet intensity around the eyes. Her throat tightened. "What's your name?" she asked finally. "Tyler," he answered. "Tyler Brooks. And you sure you talked to my mother?" The certainty in his voice was immediate. Positive. Amanda felt the cemetery tilt around her, the headstones blurring at the edges of her vision. She pressed a hand to her forehead, desperate to gather her scattered thoughts, but they refused to settle. Every rational part of her screamed that the boy was mistaken. Yet something deeper, something instinctive told her she couldn't ignore this. Not when the last memory she had of her mother had been shaped entirely by someone else's words. "If this is some kind of joke," she began, but Tyler cut in quickly. "It's not. I swear it's not. Just go there. Please." His voice cracked on the last word, revealing a vulnerability Amanda hadn't noticed before. This wasn't the confidence of someone running a con, it was the desperation of someone who knew what it felt like to be dismissed. Someone who had probably been ignored his whole life. Amanda closed her eyes, inhaled shakily, then exhaled with a shudder that seemed to pull something loose inside her. When she opened them again, the cemetery looked different, like the illusion had been broken. Like grief wasn't the only thing buried there. "Fine," she said, "I'll go, but if you're lying, I'm not." His answer was immediate, fierce. Amanda didn't respond. She turned away from the grave, gripping her car keys so tightly the metal dug into her skin. She walked back toward her Tesla, each step heavy with dread, disbelief, and a spark of something even more dangerous, hope. A hope she didn't trust. A hope she didn't want. But a hope she couldn't silence. When she reached the car and opened the door, she paused, glancing back toward Tyler. He stood among the gravestones, small and fragile against the rising light, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. She didn't thank him. She wasn't ready for that. Instead, she got into the car, started the engine, and stared at the care home address written on the visitor tag. Sunset Hills Care Home, Room 214. It felt like staring at the edge of a cliff she was about to step off. And as she pulled out of the parking lot, Amanda realized that the most terrifying part wasn't the possibility that Tyler was lying. It was the possibility that he wasn't. Amanda drove out of Forest Lawn, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles whitened against the leather. The Tesla glided through the quiet morning streets of Los Angeles, but nothing about the drive felt smooth. Every turn of the wheel was rigid, mechanical, disconnected from the chaos inside her chest. She had always thought of herself as someone who made decisions logically, someone who anchored herself in data, facts, evidence. Yet here she was, speeding down the one-on-one with her heart in her throat, chasing a possibility that sounded delusional even to her own ears. She didn't trust hope. Hope had betrayed her once already, 3 years ago, when she'd waited at the hospital for updates that never came, and then flown home to find Evelyn standing in their living room with the news that Margaret had passed before Amanda could even say goodbye. She remembered collapsing into Evelyn's arms, remembers the way Evelyn stroked her hair and murmured, "I'm here, baby. I'll take care of everything." And how desperately she had clung to that promise. She didn't question the arrangements, the closed casket, the ashes handed to her in a polished urn. The paperwork Evelyn said was too painful for her to read. Amanda had believed she was too broken to handle details, and Evelyn had stepped in with calm, precise control. At the time, it had felt like love. Now, as she drove toward Sunset Hills Care Home, a sickening doubt twisted in her stomach. Love or control, comfort or manipulation. She wasn't sure anymore. The city grew louder as she entered West Hollywood. Cafes began to open, dog walkers and joggers filled the sidewalks, the sun painted gold across billboards and palm trees. Everything felt jarringly normal, completely at odds with the storm inside her. She checked the address on the visitor tag again, even though she'd memorized it the moment she read it. Sunset Hills Care Home, room 214. Her foot pressed harder on the accelerator. What am I doing? She muttered under her breath. Visiting a care home because a homeless teenager claimed her mother was alive. It was absurd, irrational, impossible. But what if it wasn't? Amanda had built an empire based on challenging what people said was impossible. What if that same instinct, the refusal to accept the obvious, was what led her here now? She turned onto a tree-lined residential street and slowed as she approached the beige stucco building with the green awning that reads Sunset Hills Care Home in large white letters. It looked ordinary, too ordinary considering it might contain the truth she'd been denied for years. She parked at the far end of the lot, sat there with the engine running, and let her forehead drop against the steering wheel. Her breathing came shallow and uneven. She didn't know what she expected inside. Another lie, another wrong Margaret, a cruel coincidence. Or something real, something that would destroy everything she believed about her wife, her marriage, her own judgment. Amanda lifted her head, turned off the engine, and forced herself out of the car. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and exhaust fumes. She walked toward the entrance with slow, measured steps, feeling the way she felt before walking onto a stage in front of thousands of shareholders, except this time she wasn't performing. And this time the consequences weren't financial but deeply personal. The automatic doors slid open, releasing a wave of cool, sterile air and the faint scent of disinfectant. A receptionist at the front desk looked up with a polite, practiced smile. "Good morning, how can I help you?" Amanda hesitated, the words sticking in her throat. I'm here to inquire about a patient. Margaret Reynolds. The receptionist began typing, her nails clicking softly against the keys. Amanda watched her fingers move, every keystroke stretching her nerves thinner. After a moment, the woman paused and frowned at the screen. "Yes, we do have a Margaret Reynolds. She's been a resident here for approximately 3 years." She said it so casually, like she was reading off a menu. 3 years. The same 3 years Amanda had spent visiting a grave. Her pulse roared in her ears. "Is she?" Amanda struggled to form the question. "Can I see her?" The receptionist looked uncertain. "Are you family?" "I'm her daughter," Amanda said, and her voice cracked revealingly. The receptionist blinked, confusion flashing across her expression. Her daughter? That's strange. Her legal guardian is listed as Evelyn Carter. And according to our records, Ms. Reynolds has no other immediate family. The words hit like a punch to the sternum. She knew Evelyn had handled everything, had taken charge when Amanda couldn't, but seeing the lie in writing, official and unchallenged, made her skin crawl. "That information is wrong," Amanda said tightly. "Very wrong." The receptionist hesitated. "I can call the nurse in charge of her floor. She'll speak with you." She picked up the phone. Amanda stood there frozen, her hands trembling slightly despite her attempt to hide it. This was real. Too real. Someone was coming. Someone who had cared for her mother. Someone who might have answers that would unravel everything. After a brief conversation with someone upstairs, the receptionist hung up. "Nurse Ramirez will be down in a moment." Amanda nodded stiffly and stepped aside, pacing near the row of chairs meant for visitors. She couldn't sit. Her body buzzed with adrenaline, dread, and a terrible, fragile hope she kept trying to crush before it grew into something dangerous. When the elevator dinged and opened, a woman in scrubs stepped out. She was in her 40s, with warm eyes and a calm, steady presence. She scanned the room until her gaze landed on Amanda. "Ms. Reynolds?" she asked. Amanda straightened. "Yes, I'm Nurse Ramirez. I'm the primary nurse for Margaret." She paused, studying Amanda's face with a deepening curiosity. "She talks about you often." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Amanda's feet. Her throat tightened, and she blinked rapidly to keep her vision from blurring. "She talks about me every day," Ramirez said softly. "She misses her daughter very much." The dam inside Amanda cracked. Her breath stuttered, and for a second she couldn't find her voice. "I want to see her," she finally whispered. Nurse Ramirez nodded. "Follow me." Amanda walked behind her toward the elevator, each step feeling like she was crossing a boundary she could never return from. As the elevator doors closed, she caught her reflection in the metal wide eyes, tense jaw, a woman on the edge of her own unraveling. When the doors opened on the second floor, the hallway stretched before her, lined with framed paintings and soft yellow lighting. A few residents sat in wheelchairs or walked slowly with canes. It was quiet, peaceful, deceptively ordinary. But nothing about this moment was ordinary for Amanda. Nurse Ramirez stopped at a door marked 2214. "This is her room," she said gently. Amanda stared at the numbers, her breath trapped somewhere between her lungs and her heart. Years of grief, years of tears, years of believing she had lost the most important person in her life all brought her to this door. "Are you ready?" the nurse asked. Amanda didn't know if she was, but she nodded anyway. Nurse Ramirez waited a beat, watching Amanda's trembling hands before gently turning the handle and easing the door open. The soft click of the latch seemed to echo through the hallway, louder than it should have been, as though the universe itself were acknowledging that this moment would divide Amanda's life into a before and an after. As the door creaked inward, Amanda's breath stalled. She stepped across the threshold and found herself in a modest, warm, toned room lit by the golden glow of morning sun filtering through gauzy curtains. A TV murmured quietly in the background, and a vase of carnations sat wilting on the windowsill. Everything looked so normal, so painfully ordinary, that Amanda wondered how something so earth-shattering could be contained within four beige walls. Margaret Reynolds sat near the window in a padded armchair, her back slightly hunched, her hands resting weakly in her lap. Her hair, once a vibrant chestnut streaked with silver, was now snowy white. Her shoulders were frailer, her frame smaller, as though life had been quietly chipping away at her for years. But her profile, her jawline, her posture, the gentle way she tilted her head toward the light was unmistakable. Amanda's heart slammed violently against her ribs. She felt the air vanish from the room. She was staring at her mother. Not a memory, not a photograph, not a gravestone, her mother. "Mom," the word slipped out, barely audible, cracking like something long frozen, finally thawing. Margaret turned her head slowly, as though waking from a long dream. Her eyes, once sharp with mischief and warmth, were slightly clouded with age and trauma, but when they landed on Amanda, something sparked recognition. Disbelief, hope so timid it almost hurt to witness. Margaret blinked hard, her lips parted. "Amanda," she whispered, her voice small and trembling. It carried the weight of 3 years of longing. Amanda's knees nearly gave out. She moved toward her mother the way someone walks through water slowly, disbelievingly, afraid the vision might ripple and vanish. She dropped to her knees beside the chair, her hands hovering in the air, terrified to touch, terrified to confirm, terrified that this was too fragile to be real. But Margaret reached out first, her fingers thin, cool, trembling, touched Amanda's cheek. "It's you," she murmured in wonder. "My baby girl, you were real." That was all it took. Amanda broke. Tears burst free, running hot and uncontrollable down her face. She grabbed her mother's hands, pressing them to her skin, her lips, her forehead, as if trying to make up for every moment she had spent grieving a woman who was still alive. "I thought you were gone," she choked out. "I thought I lost you. I've been coming to your grave for years, Mom. I buried you." The words tore out of her too raw, too shattered. Margaret gasped softly, pain flickering through her expression. "A grave," she whispered. "You had a grave for me." Evelyn told me. She trailed off, confusion tightening her brow. The sound of her wife's name landed like a punch to Amanda's stomach. Nurse Ramirez stepped quietly back into the hall, giving them privacy. The door clicked shut behind her. Amanda rested her forehead against her mother's knee, trying to steady her breathing. Margaret stroked her hair with trembling fingers, a familiar gesture Amanda hadn't felt since she was a child. "She told me you didn't want to see me," Margaret said softly, an H embedded in every word. "She said you were angry that you had your own life, that I was slowing you down." Amanda lifted her head sharply, tears still clinging to her lashes. "No," she said fiercely. "Never. I never said that. I never felt that. Mom, I didn't know you were alive." Margaret's chin trembled. "I thought I did something wrong. I thought I lost you." Amanda shook her head, heartbreaking with every breath. "She lied to both of us." The truth settled between them, heavy, toxic, undeniable. Evelyn had isolated Margaret, had hidden her, had orchestrated a false death, a fake funeral, a hollow urn. She had stood at Amanda's side, holding her hand, comforting her while lying to her face. Amanda's stomach twisted. "I need to ask you something," she said, voice low, steadying herself against the chair. "Do you remember signing anything? Papers? Forms? Anything that gave Evelyn the right to make decisions for you?" Margaret frowned, eyes clouding with the struggle to recall details through the fog of medication and trauma. She brought documents to the hospital, she whispered. I had trouble speaking, trouble understanding things. She said they were insurance forms, liability releases. She told me you had approved them. Amanda squeezed her mother's hands. I didn't. I never even knew. Her mother's shoulders sagged as the realization dawned on her. So she put me here without telling you. Yes, Amanda said, her voice a low growl. And then she convinced the world you were dead. Margaret's breath hitched. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes but didn't fall. She looked older and smaller than ever before, not because of age, but because of the crushing weight of betrayal. Amanda forced herself to steady. She couldn't to fall apart, not now. She had to be the strong one. I'm going to take you out of here, Amanda said, brushing her mother's cheek gently. I'm going to bring you home. You're not spending one more day in this place without me knowing. Margaret shook her head weakly. I'm tired, Amanda. I don't want to be a burden. The word burned through Amanda like acid. You were never a burden. Never. You were the reason I made it anywhere in life. You held me together after Dad left. You worked 3 jobs to put me through school. You believed in me when no one else did. Her voice cracked again, raw with emotion. You deserved better than this. Margaret cupped her daughter's cheek with both hands now, her touch gentler but more certain. I'm just happy you're here, she whispered. I prayed every day that you would find me. Even when I thought maybe you truly didn't want to. Amanda's heart clenched so hard she pressed a hand to her chest. I wanted you, she said. I needed you. I mourned you. Mom, I've been grieving someone who wasn't dead. Silence thickened, but this time it wasn't empty, it was full of years of unsaid truths, of stolen time, of maternal love finally resurfacing after being buried under lies. Amanda stood slowly, helping her mother rise from the chair. Margaret's legs trembled, but she leaned into her daughter as though she were a lifeline. We were leaving, Amanda said firmly, today. I don't care what paperwork Evelyn forged or what she told the staff. I'm your daughter, and I'm taking you home. Margaret nodded against her shoulder. I trust you. For the first time in 3 years, Amanda felt whole again, but also more furious and determined than she had ever been in her life. She wasn't just taking her mother home. She was going to expose the truth. And Evelyn, the woman she once believed she loved, was about to learn exactly what happened when Amanda Reynolds discovered the unforgivable. Amanda guided her mother back into the armchair gently, promising she would only step out for a moment. Margaret nodded, her hands still trembling slightly, as though her mind hadn't fully caught up with the reality of her daughter standing before her. Amanda squeezed her fingers one last time before stepping into the hallway to find Nurse Ramirez. The moment the door closed, Amanda leaned her forehead against it and exhaled shakily. Her chest felt tight, compressed by a lifetime's worth of revelations jammed into a single morning. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. She had to be composed for her mother. For what came next? Nurse Ramirez was charting notes at the nurse's station when Amanda approached. The woman looked up immediately, reading the storm on Amanda's expression with ease. Is she all right? The nurse asked gently. She's fragile, Amanda said, but she's aware. She knows who I am. She remembers everything Evelyn told her. Her voice hardened on the last sentence. I want to take her home. Today. Right now. Ramirez held her gaze, her features sympathetic but professional. Ms. Reynolds, legally Evelyn Carter is listed as your mother's healthcare proxy. Everything about her care was signed off by her. For us to discharge Margaret into your custody, that documentation must be updated or revoked. She paused, lowering her voice. I don't doubt anything you've told me. But I can't break the law, even if the situation is unusual. Unusual, Amanda laughed, the sound raw and humorless. My mother was hidden from me 3 years. I buried an empty coffin. I've been grieving a lie. Evelyn manipulated the system, the hospital, the staff, everyone. And you retelling me the only thing that matters is a signature on a piece of paper. Ramirez didn't flinch, but compassion softened her tone. I'm telling you that there are rules in place that protect patients, and until the proper authority is transferred, my hands are tied. But she leaned in slightly. You do have options. Someone in your position can petition for emergency revocation of that proxy. A judge could sign off within hours if you present evidence. Amanda felt the first flicker of strategy ignite in her mind. She wasn't just a daughter. She was a CO who negotiated impossible deals, who broke through bureaucratic walls for a living. She would tear through this one too. I'm calling my attorney, she said. We refixing this today. She stepped aside into a quiet corner of the hallway, pulling out her phone with hands that steadied by sheer force of will. As she dialed her lawyer, someone who had handled multimillion-dollar mergers, but never something this personal, she caught her reflection in a wall-mounted glass frame. Her face was flushed, her eyes rimmed red, but there was a fire there she recognized. The fire she used when a competitor threatened her company or when investors challenged her vision. This time, that fire was aimed at her wife. Amanda, her attorney, answered on the second ring. I need to revoke a healthcare power of attorney, she said without preamble. Immediately, and I need an emergency court order for it. My mother's life, her literal life, depends on it. Her attorney asked a few questions. Amanda answered crisply, concisely, with a precision sharpened by adrenaline. She explained the lie, the funeral, the hidden institutionalization, the forged authority. The fact that her mother was alive and had been mentally manipulated into believing her daughter abandoned her. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then her lawyer spoke in a tone Amanda had only heard a handful of times, the tone reserved for high-stakes emergencies. I'll file for emergency injunction within the hour. I know a judge who can review it quickly. But Amanda, this is big. This may escalate legally, possibly criminally. Good, Amanda said, her voice cold. Let it escalate. When the call ended, she returned to her mother's room, finding Margaret with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the view outside. Amanda crossed the room slowly, her eyes softening as she approached. Mom, she murmured, sitting on the edge of the bed. I talked to my attorney. We refixing everything. You coming home with me. Margaret's eyes flickered with disbelief and hope. Really, after all this time? After too much time, Amanda said. I won't let anyone take you away from me again. She brushed a loose strand of white hair behind Margaret's ear. Her mother leaned into her touch like someone thirsty for warmth. I don't want to be trouble, Margaret whispered. I don't want to ruin your life. You could never ruin my life, Amanda said. But Evelyn, she tried. Margaret flinched at the name. Amanda, she told me so many things. Things I shouldn't have believed. She made it sound like you didn't care. A deep ache formed behind Amanda's ribs. She lied to both of us, she said softly. But it's over now, I promise. For the next half hour, mother and daughter talked in quiet voices, filling the hollow years stolen from them. Margaret shared fragments of her days here, the nurses she liked, the nightmares she had, the nights she cried into her pillow asking why Amanda never came. Each revelation carved deeper into Amanda's chest, but she forced herself to stay steady for her mother's sake. Then her phone buzzed. A message from her attorney. Emergency injunction approved. Healthcare proxy revoked. You now have full authority. Go get your mom. Relief washed through her in a dizzying wave. She stood quickly. Mom, she said with a bright, breathless smile, we can leave. Legally. Right now. Margaret clasped her hands together, as though trying to hold on to the moment. Thank you, she whispered, voice trembling. Thank you for not giving up on me. Amanda pressed her forehead to Margaret's, closing her eyes. Never. Nurse Ramirez re-entered just as Amanda lifted her mother's suitcase from the closet. The court order came through, Amanda told her, handing over the document her attorney emailed. Ramirez scanned it, nodded firmly, and began preparing the official discharge forms. I want you to know, the nurse said softly as she worked, your mother always believed you loved her. Even when she doubted, there was always a part of her that held on. Amanda swallowed hard. I'm going to make sure she never doubts again. She signed every form the nurse placed in front of her, her motions urgent but precise. When everything was complete, Ramirez wheeled Margaret to the lobby. The staff watched with quiet curiosity as Amanda's shoulders squared, eyes sharp with purpose guided her mother toward the sunlight outside. The air was crisp and warm. Margaret lifted her face to it, breathing deeply, as though tasting freedom. Amanda helped her into the Tesla, buckled her gently, then closed the door. Before she circled to the driver's side, she paused, looking back at the care home at the building where her mother had been tucked away, hidden like an inconvenient secret. Anger ignited low and steady in her stomach. When she drove out of the parking lot, Amanda wasn't the same woman who had arrived an hour earlier. She was no longer grieving. She was rebuilding. And someone she once vowed to love was about to face a truth she had never intended to see the light. Amanda tightened her grip on the steering wheel as her mother rested her head against the seat. She drove toward the life they would reclaim together, whispering the promise she meant to keep for the rest of her days. "You're safe now, Mom. I've got you." The drive back to downtown Los Angeles felt different from any drive Amanda had ever taken. The city she knew so well, its palm trees, its billboards, its endless rows of pastel apartments, looked strangely foreign, as if she were seeing it through someone else's eyes. For 3 years she had carried a grief so heavy it reshaped her world. Now, sitting in the passenger seat was living proof that the grief had been engineered, manipulated, twisted into existence by the person she'd trusted most. Amanda tightened her grip on the steering wheel as the Tesla merged onto the freeway, her heart thudding beneath a storm of emotions she couldn't fully separate. Anger, relief, confusion, love, betrayal, grief for the years lost, gratitude for the miracle sitting beside her. Every emotion demanded attention at once, creating a pressure in her chest that felt almost unbearable. Margaret stared out the passenger window, her fingers lightly touching the glass, as though reacquainting herself with the world. "It's strange," she murmured softly. "I haven't seen the city in so long. I forgot how bright everything is, and how loud." Amanda glanced over, her throat tightening at the sight of her mother's wonder mixed with a quiet sadness. Margaret had always loved Los Angeles, the farmers' markets, the sunsets, the chaotic energy of the city. To think she had spent 3 years confined to a single room, denied even the smallest glimpses of the life she once lived, made Amanda's stomach twist. "You'll have plenty of time to see everything again," Amanda said, trying to sound calm. "We'll take it slow. Whatever you need." Margaret nodded but didn't smile. Her hand drifted to the pearl necklace resting against her collarbone, the necklace Amanda had given her on her 65th birthday. Margaret brushed the pearls gently with her thumb as if the familiarity grounded her. "I held onto this every night," she whispered. "Every time I missed you, I touched it. I told myself that as long as I had it, I still had a piece of you." Amanda blinked rapidly, her vision blurring. "You had all of me," she said, her voice trembling. "You always did. You just didn't know." Margaret turned her head slowly and studied her daughter. "I tried calling you in the beginning," she said. "The nurses would tell me they left messages, or that Evelyn told them not to let me call because it upset me too much. That part confused me. Talking to you never upset me. Losing you did." Amanda's hands clenched around the steering wheel. She felt heat rise behind her ribs, spreading like wildfire. Evelyn had controlled everything, the narrative, the access, the truth itself. She had positioned herself as the mediator of all communication, filtering out anything inconvenient. "I never received a single message," Amanda said. "Not one. Evelyn told me you didn't want to talk, that the stroke made everything overwhelming for you. She said calling would stress you out." Margaret shook her head slowly. "No, the only thing that stressed me was not hearing your voice." Amanda swallowed hard. She wanted to scream. She wanted to pull the car over and let out all the anger she'd been trying to hold inside her ribcage since the moment Tyler spoke to her at the cemetery. But she couldn't. Not in front of Margaret. Her mother had been through enough. So Amanda inhaled deeply, pretending the breath steadied her when in reality it only made the turmoil sharper. Traffic thickened as they approached the city center, giving Amanda more time to think, and those thoughts spiraled quickly. Evelyn had destroyed 3 years of their lives. She'd taken advantage of Margaret's vulnerability. She'd preyed on Amanda's trust. She'd orchestrated a fake funeral, a fake cremation, a fake grieving process. Amanda had stood beside her, sobbing into her shoulder while Evelyn rubbed her back in soothing circles, whispering words of comfort that now felt like venom. A wave of nausea churned through her. "Amanda," Margaret's voice pulled her back. "Are you okay?" Amanda forced her expression to soften. "I'm fine," she lied, "just thinking." Margaret studied her with a mix of concern and maternal intuition sharpened over decades. "You don't have to be strong for me," she said gently. "Not anymore." Amanda let out a shaky breath. "If I let myself fall apart right now," she whispered, "I'm not sure I'll be able to put myself back together." Margaret placed her hand on Amanda's arm, her touch warm and reassuring. "You will," she said. "You always do. You always have." Amanda didn't respond. She couldn't, not without breaking. Instead, she let the silence fill the car, a heavy, fragile silence that spoke of wounds still open and trust slowly stitching itself back together. As the Tesla exited toward downtown, Margaret looked at the skyline with a contemplative expression. Are you still living with your wife? She asked, the last word catching awkwardly in her throat. Amanda's jaw flexed. Not for long, she said. I'm leaving her today, as soon as I get you settled. Margaret nodded slowly, as though she expected the answer but still needed to hear it spoken aloud. I'm sorry, she murmured. I know you loved her. Amanda's laugh was quiet and hollow. I don't even know what I felt anymore. What I thought was love, maybe it was manipulation. Or maybe it was love that she twisted into something else. Her grip tightened on the wheel again. Either way, she lost the right to be in my life the moment she took you out of it. Margaret didn't argue. She simply squeezed Amanda's arm again, gentle, supportive, steady. The kind of touch that said she understood without needing details. As they drove the last few blocks, Amanda mentally prepared for what came next. Getting her mother home safely. Calling a doctor she trusted to evaluate Margaret's condition. Changing locks. Removing Evelyn's access to the apartment. Filing for divorce. Exposing everything. The list grew longer with each breath she took, but beneath all the chaos was one unwavering truth: her mother was alive. And Amanda would burn down everything that had been built on lies to protect her. When they finally pulled into her building's underground garage, Margaret stared around in quiet awe. You live here? She asked softly. It looks beautiful. It's safe, Amanda said. That's all that matters right now. She parked and came around the car to help her mother out. Margaret moved slowly, her legs unsteady, but she leaned against Amanda for balance. They stood there for a moment beside the car, mother and daughter, reunited after 3 years stolen from them, before Amanda guided her toward the elevator. As the doors slid shut, enclosing them in a smooth metallic box, Margaret spoke again. Amanda, thank you for coming for me. Amanda wrapped an arm around her mother and held her close. Mom, she whispered, I should have come years ago. Margaret shook her head gently. You came when you could. And now we can start again. Amanda kissed the top of her mother's head, tears burning behind her eyes. Yes, she said. We restarting again. But beneath the tenderness of the moment, another truth simmered, cold, sharp, and unavoidable. Before their new beginning could fully take shape, Amanda would have to end something else. Something toxic. Something dangerous. Something that had cost them everything. She would have to confront Evelyn. And this time, Amanda wouldn't be the woman who trusted blindly. She would be the woman reclaiming what was stolen from her with every ounce of fury she had kept buried for 3 long years. Amanda guided Margaret gently through the hallway of her penthouse, a space normally immaculate and coldly modern. But today it felt different. The floor-to-ceiling windows washed the room in warm afternoon light, softening the sharp edges of the furniture and casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Margaret paused just inside the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the open layout, the high ceilings, the gleaming marble kitchen island. Amanda, she whispered, almost breathless, this place is beautiful. Amanda swallowed, resisting the urge to say that it had never felt like home until this moment. It's yours now too, she said softly. Margaret's hand brushed the back of the sofa, running along the fabric as if grounding herself. I can't believe how much your life has grown, she murmured. I'm proud of you. The praise should have comforted her, but instead a pinch of guilt tightened Amanda's chest. She had climbed to the top of her industry, built empires, commanded boardrooms, and yet she hadn't known her mother was alive. I wish you'd seen it, Amanda whispered. All of it, the launches, the awards, the nights I came home exhausted but happy. You should have been here. Margaret turned, her expression soft and understanding. I always knew you'd make it. Even when I didn't see it happen, I believed it. Amanda's breath caught. You should have been here, she repeated, voice cracking. Evelyn made sure you weren't. Margaret moved slowly to the sofa and lowered herself into it with deliberate care, her movement uneven but determined. Amanda fetched a blanket, draping it over her mother's lap, and Margaret smiled gratefully. Amanda, she said gently, what Evelyn did I don't blame you. She tricked us both. You didn't know. Amanda sat beside her, elbows resting on her knees, her hands clasped tightly together. I should have asked more questions, she murmured. I should have dug deeper. I let her take over because I was drowning, but I didn't even try to swim. Margaret shook her head softly. Grief clouds the mind. It makes trusting easier than fighting, and she took advantage of that. Amanda looked away, jaw tightening. She hated how true that felt. The refrigerator hummed quietly in the background, Outside, the city buzzed a distant orchestra of honking horns, rolling wheels, and muted voices. Inside the apartment, a fragile peace settled, but beneath it ran a river of tension Amanda couldn't ignore. She stood abruptly, needing motion to keep her thoughts from collapsing inward. "Let me show you your room," she said. "You need to rest." Margaret nodded, but as she tried to stand, her legs wobbled. Amanda caught her gently, steadying her with an arm wrapped around her shoulders. "Easy," Amanda murmured. "I've got you." Together they made their way down the hallway to the guest room, a space Amanda had rarely used. The sunlight filtering through sheer curtains bathed the room in a warm glow. Amanda had prepared nothing. This had all happened so fast, but she fluffed the pillows, pulled back the sheets, and helped her mother sit on the edge of the bed. Margaret looked around the room slowly, eyes softening at the quiet coziness of it. "It feels safe," she whispered. Amanda swallowed a lump in her throat. "That's the point." When Margaret eased back against the pillows, Amanda removed her mother's shoes and placed them neatly by the nightstand. "Do you need anything?" she asked. "Water, medicine?" Margaret shook her head gently. "Just rest," she murmured. "I'm tired. I think my body hasn't understood what happened yet." Amanda brushed her mother's hair back, the gesture instinctive and tender. "Sleep as long as you want," she whispered. "You're home now." As Margaret's eyes fluttered shut, Amanda lingered, watching her mother breathe slowly, peacefully, something she hadn't seen since before the stroke. When she finally stepped out of the room and closed the door halfway, the weight she had been holding inside her chest collapsed into something raw and shaking. She braced a hand against the hallway wall, sucking in air before her knees gave out. Tears blurred her vision, spilling freely down her cheeks. It wasn't a graceful cry. It was a cry pulled from the deepest corner of her soul. From every moment she had kneeled at a grave she now knew was empty. From every night she whispered goodbyes she never needed to say. After several minutes, she forced herself upright, wiping her face with her sleeve. She needed to stay focused. Margaret was safe now. She had to make sure she stayed that way. Which meant confronting Evelyn. Just thinking the name made Amanda's stomach clench. She paced the living room, anger building like steam trapped beneath her ribs. She replayed every moment of the last 3 years, Evelyn's practiced sympathy, her controlling insistence on handling arrangements, her careful explanations about why the casket must remain closed, her gentle but firm refusal to let Amanda see the body. Now the dots connected with horrifying clarity. Evelyn had never once cried in that entire funeral. Amanda remembered assuming she was coping differently. Now she realized it had been something else entirely: calculation. Or worse, satisfaction. Amanda grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and began scrolling through the contacts until she reached Evelyn's name. Her thumb hovered over the call button, her breath sharp and uneven. Confronting Evelyn while enraged might cloud her judgment. And she needed clarity. She needed precision. She needed to strike not with emotion, but with truth. So she lowered the phone, pacing again, forcing her breath to steady. She would confront Evelyn, but on her terms, in her timing. First, she had to secure the apartment. Amanda immediately called building security. "This is Amanda Reynolds," she said, her tone firm, authoritative. "Effective immediately. Revoke building access for Evelyn Carter. Remove her fob permissions. If she attempts to enter, do not allow it and notify me directly." The security officer agreed without hesitation. Then Amanda called her attorney again. "File the divorce papers today," she said. "I don't care how fast you need to move, just make it happen. And prepare a statement revoking any marital financial permissions she has." Her attorney pushed back gently, reminding her that certain steps required due process, but Amanda cut him off. "Then start the process now. She will not take anything else from me." The apartment felt too quiet now, too still, as though holding its breath while waiting for the storm that was coming. Amanda sank onto the sofa, wiping away the last of her tears. She needed a plan, a structured, detailed plan that would guide the next 24 hours. Evelyn would notice the revoked access soon. She might show up. She might try to lie again, manipulate again, twist everything into something palatable. But Amanda wasn't the same woman she had been yesterday. She wasn't grieving. She wasn't lost. She wasn't vulnerable. She was a daughter who had found her mother, and a woman who had finally opened her eyes. She stared out at the city skyline, jaw tightening with resolve. Evelyn was going to face her, not with tears, not with confusion, but with truth sharpened into steel. Amanda would dismantle every lie, every manipulation, every carefully constructed illusion. And she would do it with the same determination she brought into every boardroom, except this time. The stakes were far higher. In the bedroom down the hall, her mother slept quietly, her breathing faint but steady. Amanda listened for it, letting the fragile sound anchor her. She's safe, Amanda whispered to herself. She's finally safe. But she knew safety was temporary. Not until she confronted Evelyn. Not until she severed the last tie to the woman who stole 3 years of her life. Not until she set everything right. And tomorrow or even tonight Evelyn would learn that the woman she once controlled had become someone entirely different. Someone powerful. Someone awakened. Someone ready to fight back. While Amanda meticulously organized a plan in her head, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The vibration echoed in the quiet apartment, slicing through the stillness like a blade. She glanced over, instantly recognizing the name flashing across the screen, Evelyn. It figured she would call now. Amanda stared at the screen as it buzzed again, her pulse rising but her expression steadying. She didn't answer. Not yet. She wasn't ready, not emotionally, and not strategically. She let the phone ring until it stopped, but barely 10 seconds passed before it lit up again. Evelyn was persistent, as always. Amanda muted the device, feeling a strange, powerful calm settle over her. Unlike earlier, when everything inside her felt like it was unraveling, now she felt controlled, dangerously so. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter, letting the cold drink soothe her parched throat. For the first time in years, water tasted clean. Her mind, however, churned. Evelyn must have discovered the revoked building access. She would have tried to enter, would have found her fob useless, would have felt the first crack forming beneath her feet. Good. Amanda wanted her unsettled, wanted her guessing. That gave Amanda advantage. She pulled out her phone again, not to answer, but to read the text Evelyn had sent moments earlier. Evelyn, call me. Now. No greeting, no explanation, no pretense of concern. The tone was sharp, clipped, panicked. Amanda almost laughed. She typed nothing back. The phone buzzed again, and again she watched the name appear and disappear until the call faded. Evelyn was losing control, losing access, losing the structure she'd built from lies. And Amanda was finally the one pulling the threads loose. She peeked down the hallway toward the guest room where Margaret slept. The slow, calm rhythm of her mother's breathing gave her strength. She couldn't deal with Evelyn until she knew for certain her mother was comfortable. With soft steps, Amanda opened the guest room door slightly to check on her. Margaret had curled onto her side, one hand tucked beneath her cheek, the blanket pulled gently to her shoulders. Her expression was peaceful for the first time since Amanda found her at the care home. Amanda watched her for a moment longer, her chest filling with a mix of love, rage, and protectiveness so fierce she felt her bones tighten. She closed the door quietly and returned to the living room where her laptop sat waiting. She opened it and immediately began drafting documents, emergency notices, revocation forms, amendments to existing wills, and power of attorney files. She documented everything thoroughly, making a detailed timeline of events: the false funeral, the forged paperwork, the restricted communication, the medical decisions made without consent. The more she wrote, the clearer the picture became. Evelyn hadn't simply been manipulative. She had orchestrated a legal disappearance. And Amanda's attorney would need all this information when confronting Evelyn's lawyer. Another buzz shook the table. This time it was a voicemail notification. Amanda hesitated a moment before pressing play through the speaker. Evelyn's voice filled the room, smooth but strained, forced, struggling to maintain composure. Amanda, I don't know what's going on, but something is wrong with the building system. Call me as soon as you get this. We need to talk. It's important. Amanda scoffed. She deleted the voicemail without saving it. She knew how Evelyn worked. First confusion, then charm, then guilt, then pressure and gaslighting. If all else failed, tears. Amanda could predict the order like clockwork. She used to fall for it. Not anymore. Before long, her phone buzzed again, this time with a more frantic message. Evelyn, why can't I get inside? Did something happen? Amanda, answer me. I'm worried. Worried. For herself, Amanda set the phone face down and focused on her notes. She documented every memory she could recall from the funeral, the inconsistencies, the rushed timeline. How Evelyn refused to let her see the cremation papers, how she insisted the ashes were delivered directly from the mortuary. Amanda had blamed her lack of involvement on grief. Now she saw how masterfully Evelyn had played her, how expertly she had preyed on Amanda's broken state, how she had sealed off every possible avenue of suspicion. The rage returned slow and heavy, sitting just beneath her ribs. But instead of consuming her, it sharpened her. She straightened her posture, rolled her shoulders back, and kept typing. When her notes were complete, she saved copies to 3 secure drives and sent everything to her attorney with one line: use this. All of it. The moment she hit send, the phone rang again. Evelyn was relentless. But this time Amanda felt ready. She grabbed the phone, walked to the window overlooking the skyline, and let the sunset calm her. She didn't answer yet, but she rehearsed the confrontation in her mind. She imagined Evelyn's face when she heard the truth that Margaret was alive, that Amanda had found her, that the entire web of lies was unraveling. Amanda could picture the shift clearly: first shock, then denial, then the scramble to regain control. But Evelyn wouldn't regain control. Not this time. Amanda walked back to the couch and sat upright, legs crossed, back straight, an executive preparing for the meeting of her life. She let the phone ring one final time, then answered but didn't speak. She wanted Evelyn to break the silence first. Amanda. Evelyn's voice came sharp through the receiver. Finally, what the hell is happening? Why can't I get into the building? Why is security telling me I need your permission? This is ridiculous. Amanda inhaled deeply before responding, letting every word fall into place like a verdict. Access is revoked, she said calmly. You are no longer welcome here. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. What are you talking about? Did we have a fight I don't remember? Did something happen? Can you please just tell me what's going on? Amanda closed her eyes. I know. Evelyn's silence, dense, loaded, electrifying. Know what? Evelyn asked slowly, her voice suddenly tense. Amanda didn't soften. Everything, she said. I know what you did to my mother. I know she's alive. Another long, breathless silence, long enough that Amanda almost imagined she heard Evelyn's heartbeat through the phone. When Evelyn finally spoke, her voice had transformed into something low and panicked. Amanda, she whispered, listen to me. I can explain. Amanda's eyes flashed with fury. She kept tightly contained. Good, she said, her voice icy and composed. You'll do that tomorrow. In person, at my attorney's office. Evelyn sputtered. Attorney, why? Amanda, please, don't do this. Don't make assumptions. You re-upset. You re-being manipulated. Someone is lying to you. Amanda almost smiled, a humorless, razor-sharp smile. Someone did lie to me, she said, for 3 years, and that person was you. Before Evelyn could respond, Amanda hung up. Her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She had taken the upper hand. She had seized control, and now Evelyn knew it. Amanda exhaled and leaned back against the couch. She didn't feel victorious. Not yet. She wouldn't feel victorious until every truth was exposed, every lie confronted, and every piece of her life reclaimed. But tonight marked the beginning, the shift, the turning point. Behind her, Margaret's quiet breathing continued down the hallway, steady and soft, a reminder of what mattered most. And tomorrow, the woman who stole 3 years from them would finally face the consequences. That night, long after the sun dipped behind the skyline and the city lights glittered like scattered jewels across the horizon, Amanda sat alone in the living room with her laptop open and her nerves humming like live wires beneath her skin. The apartment that once felt cavernous and sterile now felt heavier, full of presence and memory, even though her mother slept peacefully down the hallway. Every so often, Amanda stood and walked to the bedroom door just to listen for the quiet rise and fall of Margaret's breathing. Every steady inhale soothed her. Every exhale reminded her why tomorrow mattered. Why the storm she was about to unleash was necessary. Why forgiveness couldn't exist without truth. The city outside buzzed with nightlife, laughter echoing from rooftop bars, music drifting up from a distant club, but inside, Amanda existed in a world of stillness broken only by the rhythmic tapping of her keyboard. She was preparing for war, and the battlefield would not be emotional. It would be legal, tactical, precise. She compiled every document Evelyn had given her over the years: insurance forms, estate papers, medical records, mortuary receipts. She scanned each one carefully, noting inconsistencies she had never questioned before. Dates that did align. Signatures that didn't look quite right. Statements supposedly from doctors whose names she didn't recognize. Tiny red flags that had meant nothing to a grieving daughter but now screamed with significance. The further she dug, the clearer the truth became. Evelyn had planned this for far longer than Amanda initially realized. She hadn't simply taken advantage of an opportunity. She had crafted a narrative, controlled every avenue that might slip out of her grasp, and carefully molded Amanda's world into something dependent, isolated and malleable. The realization made Amanda's stomach twist, both with disgust and with shame. How had she not seen it? How had she allowed herself to be guided so blindly? She closed her eyes and leaned back in her chair, pressing the heels of her palms against her eyelids until blotches of light danced behind the darkness. It wasn't blindness, she reminded herself, it was trust. Trust in someone she thought loved her. Trust built over years of shared memories, private jokes, quiet nights on the couch with wine and movies, vacations filled with soft touches and whispered promises. Trust that had been weaponized against her. Amanda let out a long, shaking breath. Tomorrow she would confront Evelyn. But tonight she had to face the truth about herself. Her phone pinged again. Another message from Evelyn. Evelyn, I went by the care home today. They said you were there. What is going on? Why won't you talk to me? I'm scared. Amanda threw her head back and laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that faded quickly. Evelyn had always been skilled at flipping narratives, turning herself into the victim when cornered. But Amanda wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. She set the phone aside without responding and returned to her preparations. Her attorney had asked for a full chronology of events, including behavioral patterns she'd observed throughout her marriage. It was painful to write. Every entry felt like peeling away a layer of trust and exposing the rot beneath. She typed through clenched teeth. Month after Mom's funeral, Evelyn insisted on choosing where the ashes were kept. 6 months after she discouraged me from visiting the cemetery, said it kept me stuck in grief. 1 year mark, she pressured me to sign joint financial documents I didn't fully understand. The list grew. With each entry she added, Amanda felt the anger inside her sharpen from a scattered flame into a steady, blazing line of purpose. Her mother had suffered. She had suffered. And while Evelyn had thrived in the shadows of their pain, tomorrow those shadows would dissolve beneath the weight of the truth. It was past midnight when Margaret's soft voice drifted down the hallway. Amanda. She appeared at the edge of the living room, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Amanda immediately stood. Mom. You should be resting. Margaret sat slowly on the sofa. I tried, she said. But I woke up and I didn't know where I was for a moment. I needed to see you. Amanda sat beside her, pulling the blanket tighter around her mother's small frame. I'm right here, she said. Margaret studied her daughter's face with a knowing expression. You haven't slept, and you rethinking too hard. Amanda didn't deny it. There's a lot to do tomorrow, she murmured, a lot to face. Margaret's hand found Amanda's and squeezed gently. She didn't break you, she whispered. Even when she tried. Amanda swallowed, feeling her chest tighten. She broke pieces of me, she admitted, small ones. Ones I didn't even know were missing until today. Margaret shook her head. Maybe she cracked them. But cracked things can be repaired, and you're stronger now, Amanda. I can see it. Amanda looked away, blinking rapidly. Margaret's voice softened even further. I heard you talking earlier with such certainty. You were always like that as a girl. Even when you were afraid, you moved forward anyway. You fought for every dream you had. She paused, tears glistening faintly in the glow of the city lights. Fight for this too. Fight for yourself. The words cut deep. Amanda leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, absorbing the warmth she'd missed for so many years. I'm scared, she whispered for the first time. I know, Margaret replied, resting her cheek against Amanda's hair. But fear means you care, and caring is why you'll win. They stayed like that for several minutes, the quiet stretching between them like a soft fabric Mary stitched by hand. When Margaret began to grow drowsy again, Amanda guided her back to the room and helped her settle in. She stayed until her mother's breathing steadied once more. Only then did she return to the living room, refreshed yet resolute. She dimmed the lights, lit a single candle on the coffee table, and sat cross-legged on the carpet, a position she hadn't taken since college during nights she spent studying for finals. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, letting the weight of her intentions sink into her bones. Tomorrow wasn't just about confronting Evelyn. It was about reclaiming their lives. Reclaiming the years stolen. Reclaiming the truth. Reclaiming herself. Amanda opened her eyes slowly, focusing on the city lights flickering beyond the glass. The skyline stood tall and steady, mirroring her resolve. She whispered into the quiet room, "She doesn't get to win. Not anymore." The candle flame flickered, casting shadows against the walls that no longer frightened her. They had shape now, definition, clarity. She was no longer afraid of the dark, because she had finally learned how to strike a match. Amanda rose to her feet, blew out the candle, and walked to the window. Her reflection stared back stronger, sharper, more determined than she had seen herself in years. She rested her palm against the cool glass, taking in the city she had built a life in. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the truth would rise. Tomorrow, Evelyn Carter would face the consequences of her choices. But tonight, in the safety of her home, and the fragile peace of her mother's breathing down the hall, Amanda allowed herself a quiet moment of strength. Then she turned away from the window, squared her shoulders, and whispered the promise that carried her into morning, "This ends with me." Amanda woke before dawn, long before the first streaks of orange crept across the Los Angeles skyline. For a moment she lay still, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the day settle across her chest like a familiar but unwelcome visitor. Today was the day Evelyn would finally face the truth. Today was the day Amanda would reclaim everything that had been taken from her: her trust, her stability, her mother, her sense of reality. The thought alone made her heart beat unevenly, but beneath the fear was a steadier force: resolve. Determination. A strength she hadn't realized remained inside her after 3 years of grief. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes, and the immense silence of the penthouse reminded her she wasn't alone. She slipped out of bed and padded softly through the hallway until she reached the guest room. The door was ajar, and inside, Margaret slept peacefully, her breathing soft and steady. The sight grounded Amanda immediately. Everything she was about to do today, every confrontation, every legal battle, every ounce of emotional turmoil, was for her mother. She pulled the door slightly more closed to block out the kitchen light that would soon spill in, then made her way to the living room. The coffee machine sputtered to life, filling the space with the familiar aroma of roasted beans. Amanda stood at the counter, hands wrapped around the warm mug, staring vacantly at the city beyond the window. She rehearsed the conversation with Evelyn again and again in her mind. She imagined Evelyn's attempts to manipulate, to twist the truth, to plead ignorance. She imagined her acting confused, frightened, betrayed. She imagined her trying to regain control. But each imagined scenario ended the same way, with Amanda unmoved. With Amanda holding the truth firmly in her hands. With Evelyn exposed. Her phone buzzed on the countertop, an early message, probably from her attorney. She checked it. Attorney 9:30, a meeting confirmed. My conference room. Bring documentation. And Amanda, stay calm. She didn't respond immediately. Calm was the goal, yes. But she wasn't sure complete calm was possible. She sipped her coffee, allowing the heat to steady her senses. The apartment felt deceptively peaceful, the kind of quiet that hid the storm brewing beneath its surface. The events of the previous day blurred together in her mind, a cascade of revelations and emotions she hadn't fully processed. She'd gone from grieving daughter to investigator, from wounded partner to strategic adversary. Today she needed to become something else. Someone who could look Evelyn in the eyes and say the words she'd held back for years. She set down her mug and began preparing for the meeting. On the coffee table, she arranged all the documents she compiled overnight, her thorough timeline, copies of suspicious paperwork, phone records showing no messages from the care home, digital logs of Evelyn's access to accounts. She printed what she needed, scanned backups, loaded everything into a slim black folder. Each action steadied her further. When she finished, she walked to the hallway again and slowly opened the guest room door. Margaret stirred as sunlight brushed her cheek. She blinked, saw Amanda, and offered a soft smile. "Morning, sweetheart," she murmured. Amanda returned the smile, but her eyes carried the weight of the day. "Morning," she whispered. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," Margaret replied. Amanda adjusted the blanket and helped her mother sit up slowly. "I need to go out for a few hours," she said gently. Margaret's brow lifted, worry flickering beneath her expression. "Is it about Evelyn?" Amanda nodded. "Yes, but everything's okay. I just need to handle something. I'll be back soon." Margaret reached for her daughter's hand. "Don't go alone," she urged. "I don't trust that woman. She's capable of things we didn't see." Amanda squeezed her mother's fingers. "I won't be alone. My attorney will be with me the whole time." And I won't let her near you again. Margaret seemed to relax at that. Then go, she said softly. Go finish this. Amanda kissed her mother's forehead, helped her settle with a glass of water, and moved quickly through the apartment. She ordered a private care nurse for the morning, explaining there was a fragile medical situation and asking the service to send someone trustworthy. When the nurse arrived, a woman named Clara with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, Amanda felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. She introduced Clara to Margaret, ensured she had all necessary information, and made sure her mother felt safe before grabbing her keys and folder. The elevator ride down to the garage felt strangely surreal, as if she were descending into another version of her life, one where the person she loved once had turned into someone she barely recognized, one where Amanda had to face the remnants of that love and tear it apart with her own hands. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped confidently toward her car, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor, echoing determination. The drive to her attorney's office in Century City was a blur of traffic lights and early morning commuters. Her fingers tapped against the steering wheel, not out of nervousness, but anticipation. By the time she parked and entered the sleek glass building, her mind had sharpened into something razor-focused. The receptionist greeted her warmly and directed her to the conference room. Her attorney, Daniel Harper, stood waiting at the end of the long mahogany table. Amanda, he greeted, offering a firm handshake. We'll get through this. Amanda nodded, placing the folder on the table. When does she arrive? Any minute, Daniel replied. I'll sit beside you. You say only what you choose to say. You control the room. Amanda appreciated the clarity. She took her seat, spine straight, palms resting lightly on the table. She inhaled deeply, mentally preparing herself for whatever version of Evelyn walked through that door, the remorseful one, the manipulative one, the furious one. She didn't care which. They all meant the same thing now, a mask over the truth. Several minutes passed before the door finally opened. Evelyn stepped inside. For a brief second the air thickened. Amanda's breath stilled. There she was, the woman she once loved, the woman who shared her home, her secrets, her most vulnerable moments. Evelyn looked almost the same as ever, perfectly styled hair, crisp white blouse, pearl earrings she wore when she wanted to appear composed. But her expression wasn't composed. It was tight with fear, brittle around the edges. Amanda, she said softly, as if speaking to a wounded animal. What is going on? Amanda didn't stand. She didn't smile. She didn't offer warmth. Instead, she looked directly into Evelyn's eyes, unflinching. You lied to me, she said, and today, you going to tell me why? Evelyn's face paled, her confidence faltering. I don't know what you mean. You being. Amanda raised a hand, silencing her. My mother, she said slowly, clearly, is alive. Evelyn froze, no blinking, no reaction, just stillness, then a tiny, nearly imperceptible flicker of fear. Daniel leaned forward. Let's begin. Amanda watched Evelyn carefully. For the first time in years, she felt the balance of power shift, not in Evelyn's favor, but hers. And she was ready for everything that came next. Evelyn stood frozen for a long second, her fingers tightening around the strap of her designer handbag until her knuckles paled. Her polished exterior wavered under the weight of Amanda's words. It wasn't shock, not genuine shock anyway. It was something else. Calculation. A frantic attempt to rearrange her expression into one that would serve her best. Amanda, she began slowly, her voice adopting the familiar gentle tone she used whenever she wanted to soothe, manipulate, or redirect. I think someone has misled you. Your mother. Stop, Amanda said firmly. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. Daniel cleared his throat as he settled into the chair beside Amanda. Mrs. Carter, he said, tone diplomatic but sharp. Let's proceed with clarity, Ms. Reynolds has documented evidence regarding the concealment of her mother's medical status, residence, and living condition. She's prepared to file formal charges should you refuse to cooperate fully and truthfully today. Evelyn's eyes flickered toward him, widening in alarm before snapping back to Amanda. Charges? Amanda, this is outrageous. Why are you doing this? Who is putting these ideas in your head? Amanda leaned back slightly, her expression controlled, though her pulse thudded with an icy rhythm beneath her calm facade. The only person I spoke to, she said quietly, was my mother. That landed harder than anything else. Evelyn's face dropped, subtle but unmistakable. The blood drained from her cheeks. For the first time, she looked genuinely rattled. You talked to her, she whispered. How? When? Amanda opened the folder in front of her with slow, deliberate motion. Yesterday morning, she said, sliding a photograph across the table. It was a picture Nurse Ramirez had allowed her to take. Margaret smiling weakly from her armchair, wearing the pearl necklace Evelyn claimed had been cremated with her. Evelyn stared at the image, her composure fracturing. Amanda, she breathed, her voice barely audible. You weren't supposed to, she caught herself, but it was already too late. Amanda's eyes narrowed. Finish that sentence, she demanded. I wasn't supposed to what? To find out my mother was alive. To know I was manipulated into mourning someone still breathing. Or were you going to say something else? Evelyn shook her head rapidly, strands of hair slipping from her perfect style. You don't understand, she said. I was trying to protect you. Amanda let out a hollow laugh. Protect me. You orchestrated a fake funeral. You handed me ashes that weren't even hers. You told doctors you were her daughter. You forged signatures. You made medical decisions on her behalf. And then you told her I abandoned her. Evelyn pressed her palms against her temple as if warding off a headache. She was dying, she insisted desperately. The doctors said she wouldn't make it. I didn't want you to go through the trauma of watching her fade away. You were barely sleeping, barely eating. Your mental health, my mental health was my decision to manage, Amanda snapped. Not yours. You don't get to rewrite reality because it makes things easier for you. Evelyn's voice rose, cracking under pressure. I didn't know she would survive the stroke. I didn't know she would stabilize. They told me she wouldn't recover, that she would be unresponsive. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. Amanda let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of Evelyn's words to hang in the air. And the years after she stabilized, she asked coldly. What about when she was conscious? When she asked to see me? When she begged the staff to call me? When she cried herself to sleep thinking I abandoned her? Where were your good intentions then? Evelyn's mouth opened and closed without sound. Daniel stepped in, sliding another document across the table. We have call logs from the care home, he said. Dozens of attempted calls from Margaret to a number that was blocked. You gave them that number. Evelyn's shoulders sagged. Her voice became small. Amanda, please. You have to listen. You were slipping away from me. You were buried in work, constantly grieving, shutting me out. I felt like I was losing you. Amanda stared, stunned by the audacity. So you stole my mother. I didn't steal her. Evelyn cried. I just removed the obstacle. She kept telling you to leave me. She never liked me. She never accepted our marriage. She pushed you to question everything. And you couldn't handle that, Amanda finished. You couldn't handle being challenged, or not being the center of my world. So you took the one person who loved me before you ever existed and erased her. Evelyn slammed her palms on the table, her composure snapping entirely. I did it for us, she shouted. I did it because you wouldn't have chosen me if she were still around. She always had too much influence over your decisions, your life, your emotional space. I wanted to be enough for you, Amanda. I wanted you to need me. Amanda felt something inside her go cold, quiet, devastating cold. You didn't want to be loved, she said softly. You wanted to be depended on, controlled. Evelyn opened her mouth to argue, but Amanda continued before she could speak. I loved you, truly, but what you wanted was ownership. The room fell still. Evelyn sank slowly into the chair, her bravado collapsing like a house of cards. She wiped her trembling hands across her face. I know I made mistakes, she whispered. But I can fix this, we can fix this. Amanda, I'm begging you, don't throw everything away. We built a life together. You built a lie, Amanda replied. And I lived inside it. Evelyn reached across the table as if to touch her hand, but Amanda recoiled. Daniel placed a protective hand on Amanda's arm. Mrs. Carter, he said evenly, your client has already filed for divorce. Today's meeting is a formality before we proceed legally. Evelyn's eyes widened with horror. Amanda, divorce. Over this, Amanda stared incredulously. Over this, you buried my mother. You buried me. You buried our marriage with every lie you told. There's nothing left to save. Evelyn shook her head violently. No, you not thinking straight. You emotional. You being manipulated by whatever nurse or stranger filled your head with this. My mother filled my head with it. Amanda cut in sharply. Not a nurse, not a stranger. My mother. Evelyn flinched at the word mother as though it burned. Amanda stood, gathering her folder. We redone here, she said. You will have no contact with me or my mother moving forward. Any attempt to approach us will be handled legally. Evelyn rose too quickly, her chair skidding backward. Amanda! You can't leave like this, please. Don't walk away. Amanda looked at her with a steadiness she didn't know she possessed. I walked away a long time ago, she said. You just didn't notice. Daniel opened the door for her. Amanda stepped through it without hesitation. Behind her, Evelyn's voice cracked, breaking into a sob. Amanda! Don't do this! But for the first time in 3 years, Amanda didn't stop. Didn't turn around. Didn't question. The truth had finally set her free brutally, painfully, unquestionably free. And she intended to stay that way. Amanda didn't realize she had been holding her breath until the elevator doors slid shut and she felt her lungs finally expand. Her reflection in the polished metal was pale but steady, her posture rigid but no longer brittle. She had walked into that room with years of grief strapped to her back like chains, but she walked out with something different: truth. Truth that hurt, truth that cut, but truth that liberated. As the elevator descended toward the lobby, she pressed a hand over her sternum, feeling the sharp ache beneath her ribs. It wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was release, a painful but necessary unburdening that left her breathless. The lobby was quiet, the morning rush having thinned. Amanda passed security, pushed through the revolving glass doors, and stepped into the bright Los Angeles sunlight. The warmth hit her immediately, settling across her skin like reassurance. She paused on the sidewalk, inhaling deeply. For 3 years, mornings had felt heavy and gray, even on the sunniest days. But now the world looked different, as if a film had been pulled from her eyes. It wasn't happiness she felt. Not yet. But clarity. And after everything she had lived through, clarity felt like oxygen. Her car was parked across the street. As she unlocked it and slid inside, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Evelyn, long, frantic, begging. Amanda didn't open it. She deleted the notification with one swipe, a clean erasure that felt symbolic. Her attorney would handle everything from here. She didn't owe Evelyn another word, not after the truth that had finally surfaced. The drive home was quiet, smooth, almost soothing. Traffic flowed easily, the city waking up around her with its predictable rhythm. She watched pedestrians on the sidewalks, people grabbing coffee, walking dogs, rushing to jobs, and for a brief moment she envied their normalcy. Her life had been anything but normal lately. But she wasn't broken. Not anymore. She was rebuilding. She was reclaiming. The pieces of her life were scattered, but they were hers again. When she pulled into her building's garage and stepped out of the car, the air smelled faintly of concrete and cool steel. She rode up in the elevator, her heart speeding up with each floor. Not from anxiety but from anticipation. Margaret was upstairs, alive, breathing. Waiting for her. Amanda unlocked the door quietly, slipping inside. The penthouse was peaceful, the soft hum of the air conditioner blending with distant city noise. Clara, the nurse, sat in the armchair reading a magazine. She stood immediately when she saw Amanda. "Welcome back," Clara said with a polite smile. "Your mother's been awake for a little bit. She's been asking for you." Amanda nodded. "Thank you for staying with her." "Of course," Clara said. "She's resting in the living room." She wanted to sit by the window. Amanda walked toward the large windows overlooking the skyline, and when she turned the corner, she saw her mother sitting on the sofa with a blanket draped over her legs. Margaret looked up the moment Amanda entered. Her face softened into a smile so gentle it unraveled something deep inside Amanda's chest. "Hi, sweetheart," Margaret said, her voice faint but warm. Amanda knelt beside her immediately. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling?" Margaret reached out and cupped Amanda's cheek with trembling fingers. "Better now that you're home. Did everything go okay?" Amanda didn't want to burden her mother with details, but she wouldn't lie either. "It went the way it needed to," she said softly. "I told her the truth, and she knows she can't come near us anymore." Margaret let out a shaky breath, a mix of relief and sorrow. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to come between you two." Amanda shook her head instantly. "You didn't," she said firmly. "She made choices, cruel ones. You never had to apologize for existing." Margaret's eyes glistened. "Still, I'm sorry you're hurting." Amanda placed her hand over Margaret's. "No more apologies. We're moving forward." Margaret nodded slowly, then glanced toward the window. "It's so beautiful up here," she murmured. "I can't believe this is your home." Amanda smiled softly. "It feels more like home with you here." Margaret's expression warmed, a quiet pride glowing in her eyes. "You've built something incredible, even with everything you went through." Amanda exhaled through her nose. It wasn't worth it without you, she admitted. Nothing felt real. Nothing felt complete. Margaret squeezed her hand. Then let's build something real together now. A new beginning. The words hit Amanda with surprising force. A new beginning. Something she had wanted but never let herself hope for. Clara approached with a gentle smile. Mrs. Reynolds, would you like some tea? Margaret nodded. Yes. Please, something warm. As Clara stepped away to the kitchen, Margaret looked back at Amanda, studying her with quiet intensity. You look lighter, she whispered. Tired but lighter. Amanda let out a soft laugh. I feel relieved, angry, exhausted but relieved. Margaret tilted her head. She didn't deny it, did she? Amanda hesitated but finally shook her head. No, she said. She didn't. She tried to justify it, tried to twist it. But in the end, she admitted enough. Margaret leaned back against the sofa cushion, eyes closing for a brief moment. I never understood why she hated me so much, she murmured. I wasn't perfect. But I loved you. That was all I ever tried to do. Amanda's voice softened. That's why she hated you. Margaret blinked in confusion. Because you loved me, Amanda nodded. Yes. Because you loved me in a way she couldn't control. The truth settled between them with gentle weight. Clara returned with a cup of chamomile tea and handed it to Margaret, who smiled gratefully. Amanda rose to give her mother space to sip, then stepped toward the windows for a moment of quiet reflection. The city stretched endlessly before her, bright, bold, alive. And for the first time in years, Amanda felt she could breathe in sync with it. When she turned back, Margaret was watching her with soft eyes. What happens now, sweetheart? Amanda inhaled deeply. Now, she said, we start putting everything back together. Slowly, honestly, safely, and we take one day at a time. Margaret nodded. I like that. Amanda returned to sit beside her. Tomorrow we'll find a therapist you like, and a doctor I trust. We'll get you every test you need, every treatment. No more facilities unless you want them. Margaret's eyes softened further. What I want is to stay with you. Amanda swallowed, emotion pooling in her throat. Then that's what we'll do. They sat together for a long time, sipping tea, watching the city move beneath them. For the first time since this nightmare began, Amanda felt something warm push through the cracks inside her chest. Something gentle, something hopeful. She wasn't healed. Margaret wasn't healed. Their lives weren't magically fixed, but they were together. And that was the beginning of everything. When Clara gathered her things to leave, Amanda thanked her and walked her to the door. After she left, Amanda stood for a moment in the quiet entryway, listening to the hum of the apartment and the faint sound of her mother flipping through a magazine. Peace, safe, real. Amanda returned to the living room and sat beside Margaret again, allowing herself to relax fully for the first time. Her mother leaned her head on Amanda's shoulder. I missed you, she whispered. Amanda rested her cheek against her mother's hair. I missed you more, she replied softly. And for the first time in years, Amanda allowed herself the smallest, most delicate smile, one that promised a future beyond grief, beyond betrayal, beyond lies. A future built on truth, on healing, and on a love strong enough to survive even the darkest manipulations. A future she and her mother would rebuild together. The following days unfolded slowly, like sunlight creeping its way across a darkened room. Amanda found herself adjusting to a new rhythm, one that revolved not around board meetings, investor calls, or the constant anxiety she used to carry, but around Margaret's needs. The transformation was subtle but profound. The penthos, once a hollow echo of success, began to feel lived in, softened by her mother's presence. Margaret often sat near the windows with a book or the television humming in the background, drifting in and out of light naps. The simple sound of her breathing filled spaces that had long felt empty. Amanda didn't realize how starved she had been for that sound until now. Each morning, Amanda made breakfast while Margaret sat at the kitchen island, sipping herbal tea and chatting about small things, the weather, a story on the news, a memory she'd recovered from the fog of those missing years. At first, her voice trembled with exhaustion, but each day she grew a little stronger. Amanda scheduled a full medical evaluation with a doctor she trusted, someone far removed from the circle Evelyn had manipulated. The doctor confirmed that Margaret's health was delicate but stable, and that with proper care and emotional support, she could regain even more of her strength. After the appointment, as they rode back home, Margaret reached for Amanda's hand. I didn't think I'd ever sit in a car with you again, she whispered, emotion thickening her voice. Amanda squeezed her fingers gently. We were making up for lost time, she said. I won't lose you again. Margaret turned her head toward the window, hiding the tears gathering in her eyes. It feels like I got my life back, she murmured. Amanda didn't respond, because the truth was they both did. Later that evening, Amanda prepared a simple dinner, roasted chicken, vegetables, and soft bread. It wasn't much, but Margaret ate it with appreciation that broke Amanda's heart a little. It's been so long since I tasted real food, Margaret said, smiling faintly. The meals at the home weren't awful, but they weren't cooked with love. Amanda paused mid-bite, struck by how something so ordinary could mean so much. Then you will eat nothing but food made with love from now on, she said. Margaret laughed, a soft, watery sound that felt like healing. After dinner, Margaret rested while Amanda reviewed a new set of legal documents Daniel had emailed. The divorce process was officially underway. The case file against Evelyn grew thicker each day. Charges of fraud, medical impersonation, elder abuse, identity falsification, each accusation more damning than the last. Evelyn's attorney had already reached out twice, attempting to discuss matters privately, but Amanda refused. She didn't hide anymore. She didn't negotiate her trauma. She didn't grant Evelyn the power to shape the narrative. Not ever again. Still, there were moments, quiet ones, when the emotional weight hit her unexpectedly. Standing in the shower, water cascading over her shoulders, she'd feel a sudden tightness in her chest as memories surfaced. Evelyn comforting her during the fake funeral. Evelyn holding her at night while whispering, "I'm here, baby. Ivy got you." Evelyn intercepting phone calls, feeding her lies, wrapping herself in false tenderness. When these memories crashed into her, Amanda braced her hands against the tile and breathed through the sting. Healing wasn't linear. Some wounds reopened as they healed. But now she finally had space to heal. One afternoon, as Margaret napped on the sofa, Amanda stepped onto the balcony and let the breeze wash over her. The city buzzed below, cars threading through traffic, voices drifting from nearby patios, distant music from tourists strolling down the boulevard. For the first time since all this began, Amanda felt connected to it again. Not overwhelmed, not suffocated, connected. Like the world wasn't something happening outside of her, like she was part of it again. Her phone vibrated with a text from Daniel. Evelyn requested another meeting. She claims she has information relevant to your mother's care. Do you want to hear it? Amanda stared at the message, tension tightening her shoulders. She wasn't ready, not yet. She didn't want Evelyn's voice contaminating the fragile progress she and her mother had made. She typed back, "No more direct contact. Everything goes through you." Daniel replied with a simple "understood." She slipped the phone back into her pocket and returned inside. Margaret stirred awake, blinking sleepily. "You look thoughtful," her mother said. Amanda smiled and sat beside her. "Just thinking about everything that's happened." Margaret nodded, understanding instantly. "You don't have to carry it alone," she said softly. "I'm stronger than I look." Amanda laughed lightly. "You always have been." In the days that followed, Amanda hired a therapist specializing in trauma for both her and Margaret. The sessions were difficult, full of raw truth and emotional excavation, but necessary. Margaret confessed moments of fear, loneliness, confusion from the home. Amanda confessed feelings of guilt and betrayal and anger she hadn't fully acknowledged. There were tears from both sides, but also breakthroughs. Deep ones. One afternoon, after a particularly intense session, Margaret looked at Amanda with a gentleness she reserved only for her daughter. "You did everything right," she whispered. "You didn't fail me. You didn't fail yourself. She failed us. But we're here now, and that's all that matters." Amanda leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, letting those words anchor her. Because they felt true. Slowly, life began to regain rhythm. Amanda returned to work part-time, delegating most responsibilities to her executive team. Her colleagues welcomed her back with warmth, but they could sense a shift in her. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't distracted. She wasn't buried under grief. She was focused, calm, unshakably steady, the kind of leader forged by surviving something profound. Every evening when she returned home, Margaret greeted her with a smile. They ate dinner together, watched movies, talked about nothing and everything. Sometimes they cried, sometimes they laughed, but every moment felt earned, like reclaiming parts of themselves piece by piece. One night, Margaret looked at Amanda as they sat curled up on the sofa. "You don't know this," she said softly, "but while I was at the home, I prayed every night that you'd find me, even when I thought I was dying, Even when they told me you didn't want to see me, I still prayed for you." Amanda swallowed hard. "I found you," she whispered. Margaret took her hand. "You always do." There was a long silence, tender and full. A silence of gratitude, a silence of beginning again. By the end of that week, Amanda realized something she hadn't dared hope for. She wasn't just surviving. She was healing. Not because the pain had disappeared. Not because the past had been erased. But because she had reclaimed the truth. Because she had her mother back. Because she had herself back. And that was the foundation of a future she could finally imagine. Weeks passed, and Amanda found herself slipping into a routine that felt both familiar and entirely new. The grief that had once shaped every corner of her days no longer dictated the rhythm of her life. Instead, her schedule revolved around healing hers and Margaret's. Therapy sessions, medical checkups, nightly dinners together. Slowly, she felt the tightness in her chest loosen, the shadows in her mind retreat. She still woke some mornings with the remnants of old nightmares, the kind where she was searching for her mother and never finding her, but Margaret's soft voice over breakfast grounded her. Over time, those nightmares faded, replaced by something gentler: hope. At work, people noticed the shift in her demeanor. For years, she had carried herself like a woman made of sharp edges and quiet torment. Now, even though she still commanded the room with her presence, the heaviness that once clung to her had lifted. Her leadership team pulled her aside during a weekly briefing, concern mixed with curiosity. Amanda, her CFO, Laura Middleton, said carefully, "Re glad you re back, but you re different." "In a good way, just different." Amanda breathed out a small laugh. "I found something I thought I'd lost forever," she replied. Or rather, someone. The team exchanged glances, supportive ones, but no one pressed her further. They trusted her. They always had. Still, Amanda knew she couldn't keep the truth entirely private. Rumors had already begun swirling about her sudden leave of absence, the upcoming divorce, and Evelyn's mounting legal trouble. During a closed meeting with her executive board, Amanda chose honesty. She stood at the front of the glass conference room, the skyline glittering behind her, and told them everything: the truth about the funeral, the falsified documents, her mother's rediscovery, the legal battle ahead. Shock rippled through the room, but not pity, respect, deep, unwavering respect. When she finished, Laura spoke first, leaning forward with sincerity in her eyes. "Amanda, you don't owe us an explanation," she said, "but thank you for trusting us with it. Whatever you need, time, resources, coverage, we're here." Amanda felt emotion threaten behind her ribcage, but she steadied herself. "I won't let this disrupt our work," she said, "but I won't hide from it either. This happened, and I'm dealing with it." And she was. Every day brought new updates from Daniel. Evelyn's attorney attempted a dozen different strategies: claims of misunderstanding, emotional instability, medical confusion, but none of them held weight under scrutiny. The forensic signatures, the call logs, the medical charts, they all painted a damning picture. Evelyn had not been careless. She had been deliberate, intentional, strategic. But now her strategies were unraveling faster than she could patch them. Daniel called one afternoon with a new development. "Amanda," he said, "Evelyn wants to offer a full confession if we agree to reduce charges." Amanda's breath stilled. "A confession?" "Yes," Daniel replied. "She'll admit to fraudulent medical authorization, impersonation, and obstruction of familial rights. She's hoping cooperation may reduce her sentencing." Amanda closed her eyes, absorbing the weight of those words. A confession would mean closure. It would mean truth acknowledged. It would mean the world finally recognizing the magnitude of what had been done. But it also meant confronting Evelyn once more, this time in a courtroom, not a conference room. "Do we accept?" Daniel asked. Amanda took her time before responding. "We consider it," she finally said, "but only if the confession is full, detailed, and public record. No sealed agreements, no quiet deals." When she hung up, Amanda walked to the balcony where Margaret sat wrapped in a shawl, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of pink and gold. "You look thoughtful," Margaret said without turning her head. Amanda sat beside her. "Evelyn wants to confess," she said, voice steady. Margaret's brows lifted. "Does that help you?" "Help us?" Amanda nodded slowly. "It helps the truth come out. But it won't erase what happened." Margaret rested her hand atop Amanda's. "Nothing will erase it," she said gently. "But the truth can let us breathe again." Amanda exhaled, leaning her head against Margaret's shoulder. "I want you to breathe freely," she whispered. "I want our life to be ours again." Margaret smiled softly. It's already becoming that. Margaret had begun physical therapy twice a week, slowly regaining strength in her legs. Clara visited daily, helping with medication, stretches, and light mobility exercises. Amanda watched every session, absorbing every detail, determined to learn how to care for her mother without relying on anyone else. But one afternoon Clara pulled Amanda aside gently. "Ms. Reynolds," she said, "you don't have to carry every part of this alone. Caregiving is demanding physically and emotionally. Let yourself lean on people who can help." Amanda nodded politely, but inside she struggled. Independence had always been her armor. Letting others step in felt like relinquishing control, something she wasn't sure she was ready to do. But over the next few days, she realized Clara was right. One evening, as she helped Margaret button her blouse, her mother placed her hand over Amanda's. "You need rest," Margaret said simply. "Real rest. I can't be the reason you fall apart." Amanda blinked back a wave of emotion. "You not," she whispered. "You the reason I'm standing." Margaret smiled faintly. "Then let me help you stand too." And so, Amanda allowed help. She let Clara take over more of the daily tasks. She accepted her team's support at work. She trusted Daniel fully with the legal case. She wasn't surrendering control, she was reclaiming balance. As the weeks blended into a month, Amanda began to feel like a different version of herself. Softer but not weaker. Stronger but not hardened. More whole than she had been in years. On a quiet Friday evening, after Margaret fell asleep watching an old sitcom, Amanda stepped onto the balcony alone. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of jasmine. She rested her hands on the railing and watched the city breathe beneath her. Life continued. People lived, laughed, suffered, healed. And she was finally among them, not a broken shell moving through routines, but a woman rebuilding her world piece by piece. The past still lingered: Evelyn's betrayal, the years lost, but it no longer defined her. It no longer dictated what she feared or how she loved. She had found her mother. She had found the truth. And somewhere in the midst of chaos, she had found herself again. As the wind brushed her hair, Amanda whispered a quiet promise to the night. "This is only the beginning." And somewhere inside the apartment behind her, Margaret's soft breathing answered that promise with its own quiet reassurance. They were healing, together. And the life ahead of them, though imperfect, would be built on truth, strength and love that had survived the unthinkable. The morning of Evelyn's court appearance arrived with a heavy gray sky, the kind that seemed to mute the entire city beneath it. Amanda dressed in a sleek black suit, her movements slow but deliberate, each gesture carrying the weight of finality. She didn't tremble. She didn't waver. She wasn't the broken woman who had once cried at a grave that wasn't real. She was steady, sharpened by truth and guided by the fierce responsibility of protecting her mother. When she turned from the mirror, Margaret stood in the doorway holding a small silver brooch Amanda hadn't seen in years. "Wear this," Margaret whispered, pinning it gently to her daughter's lapel. "It was your grandmother's. She wore it every time she wanted courage." Amanda touched the brooch, feeling its cool metal steady her breath. "Thank you," she whispered. Margaret smiled faintly. "You don't need courage, Amanda. You are courage." They embraced before Clara arrived to stay with Margaret. Amanda kissed her mother's forehead, promising to return as soon as the hearing ended. As she stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the garage, she felt the quiet stir of anticipation in her chest. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about anger anymore. This was about closure, about truth, about reclaiming the last remnants of her life Evelyn had stolen. Traffic was heavy as she drove toward the courthouse downtown, but the stop and go rhythm of the city didn't shake her. Her mind was clear, focused. She had spent weeks preparing herself mentally and emotionally. She had read every report, attended every meeting with Daniel, reviewed every affidavit. Today was simply the conclusion of a story that needed to end. When she walked into the courthouse, Daniel greeted her with a respectful nod. "You ready?" he asked. Amanda inhaled slowly. More than ready. They walked together down the hall to Department 12, a high, ceilinged courtroom with wooden benches and a worn American flag hanging behind the judge's seat. The room buzzed with quiet conversations. Amanda took her seat at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded neatly in her lap. A few minutes later, the doors opened again, and Evelyn entered. Amanda wasn't prepared for the sight of her. Evelyn looked smaller than usual, not physically, but in presence. Her once impeccable posture was slouched. Her blouse, though still expensive, hung loose as if she'd lost weight. Her hair lacked its usual shine. But it was her eyes that struck Amanda the most. They were hollow, panic swimming beneath the surface like a trapped animal searching for escape. For a brief moment Barelyth Amanda felt something like pity flicker through her. But it dissolved quickly. Evelyn's choices had led her here, her lies, her manipulations, her cruelty. Amanda wouldn't carry her guilt any longer. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Proceedings began quickly. Daniel summarized the accusations, presenting documentation with calm, lethal precision. Records, timelines, signatures, medical affidavits, testimony from the care home all laid out systematically. Evelyn's attorney attempted weak objections, but the evidence was overwhelming. When it came time for Evelyn to speak, she rose shakily. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling, "I never meant to hurt anyone. I loved Amanda. I loved our life together. Everything I did, every decision came from fear, not malice." She clasped her hands together as though in prayer. Her mother, she never approved of me. She tried to come between us. I made mistakes, but I was desperate. I thought Amanda would be happier without the constant tension. I thought you could erase her family," Amanda said sharply, unable to restrain herself. The judge gestured for calm, but Amanda held Evelyn's gaze. "You didn't make mistakes," she continued. "You planned every detail. You forged signatures. You lied to doctors. You lied to me. You made me bury an empty casket and mourn someone who was still breathing. You stole 3 years from both of us." Evelyn's lips parted, but no sound emerged. "And worst of all," Amanda said quietly, "you convinced my mother that I didn't want her. You broke her heart to keep me for yourself." Tears shimmered in Evelyn's eyes. "I didn't know what else to do," she whispered. "You would have chosen her over me." Amanda's expression hardened. "A decent person would never make me choose at all." The judge reviewed the case soberly before rendering the decision. Evelyn would face multiple charges: medical fraud, identity falsification, obstruction of familial rights, and elder abuse. The sentencing hearing would follow in weeks. But Evelyn wasn't leaving the courthouse today. The judge ordered immediate remand, citing her as a flight risk. The bailiff approached. When the handcuffs clicked around Evelyn's wrists, the sound echoed like punctuation: sharp, final, irreversible. Evelyn didn't look at Amanda as she was escorted out, and Amanda didn't watch her go. Instead, she closed her eyes and let out a long, trembling breath. It felt like something inside her, something jagged and festering, finally loosened, releasing its grip on her soul. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. Amanda nodded. "It is." But closure wasn't triumph, it wasn't joy. It was a quiet exhale after holding her breath too long. She drove home with the windows cracked open, letting the cool air cleanse her thoughts. The city looked brighter than it had that morning. Not because anything extraordinary had happened, but because nothing was hidden anymore. The truth was in the light, and Amanda felt lighter with it. When she entered the penthouse, Margaret sat on the sofa knitting a small, uneven scarf taking shape in her hands. She looked up instantly. Amanda walked to her, sat beside her, and let her mother pull her into a warm embrace. "It's done," Amanda whispered. "It's finally done." Margaret stroked her daughter's hair. "You're safe now," she murmured, "and so am I." Amanda smiled weakly. "Yes, we are." They sat together in silence, the kind that didn't feel empty but full of healing, of shared strength, of something tender rebuilding itself piece by piece. Later that evening, Amanda stood on the balcony, watching the sun sink behind the skyscrapers. Margaret joined her, leaning on the railing beside her. "What now?" Margaret asked gently. Amanda looked at the horizon and felt something warm bloom in her chest. "Now," she said, "we live." A simple answer. But after everything they'd endured, it felt profound. "We live," Margaret echoed softly. And for the first time in years, Amanda felt like the world was finally, beautifully, right side up again. The story of Amanda and Margaret is ultimately a story about truth, love, and the devastating consequences of control. At its core, reminds us that love without honesty is not love at all, but possession, an attempt to shape another person's world into something convenient, something controllable. Evelyn believed she was acting out of fear and attachment. But the truth is that fear mixed with control becomes manipulation, and manipulation eventually rots everything it touches. One of the most powerful lessons this story teaches is that protecting someone cannot come at the cost of stealing their agency. Even the gentlest intentions, when built on deception, can create unimaginable harm. Amanda was denied 3 years of connection, 3 years of memories she could never get back, simply because Evelyn chose to decide what she thought Amanda could or could not handle. It's a reminder that no one, not even someone we love, has the right to dictate what truths we are allowed to face. Another profound lesson woven through this narrative is the danger of emotional dependency. Evelyn's entire justification was that she feared losing Amanda, but instead of addressing her insecurities, she tried to isolate Amanda from the one person who grounded her the most. Relationships built on dependency instead of mutual respect always spiral into harm. The story urges us to examine the ways we cling to the people we love, whether we are loving them or trying to own them. Evelyn lost Amanda not because Margaret existed, but because she could not accept that love is wide enough for more than one connection. True love doesn't require exclusion. It doesn't fear competition. It doesn't demand that one relationship must shrink so another can survive. When fear dictates our actions, we lose the people we're trying to keep close. The story also highlights how grief can blind us, soften our defenses, and make us vulnerable to manipulation. Amanda, shattered by the news of her mother's supposed death, let Evelyn take control because she was exhausted emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Trauma can make us trust the wrong people simply because we are too broken to question their choices. It's a powerful reminder that grief is not a weakness, but a state where we must be especially careful about who we allow to guide us. Amanda's healing began only when she confronted the truth instead of the narrative Evelyn had constructed around her. It shows that the path to healing often begins with reclaiming the truths we were persuaded to release. And sometimes, those truths hurt. Sometimes they shatter the foundation of our lives. But they are necessary, because healing cannot grow in the soil of lies. Another lesson rises from Margaret's resilience. Even after being hidden away, lied to, and emotionally abused, she never stopped believing in Amanda. Her hope was quiet but unbreakable. She held on to the necklace not as a relic of loss, but as a symbol of connection, proof that love persists even when truths are twisted. Her patience, her forgiveness, and her courage remind us that people who have been wounded deeply can still find strength and hope. And her ability to trust Amanda again shows that healing is not about forgetting the past, but about choosing which parts of it deserve space in the future. The story also teaches us something critical about self-forgiveness. Amanda struggled with guilt for not questioning Evelyn sooner, guilt for believing the lies, guilt for losing years with her mother. But guilt is only useful if it leads to growth, not self-destruction. Amanda had to learn that she wasn't responsible for the cruelty done to her. She was responsible only for what she did after the truth surfaced. Once she chose courage over denial, once she fought for her mother instead of collapsing under guilt, she began to rebuild both of their lives. This illustrates a powerful truth: we cannot control the wrongs committed against us, but we can control how we rise after they break us. Legally and thematically, the story underscores the importance of vigilance, especially regarding trust placed in those with access to our personal or medical decisions. Evelyn's actions were extreme, but real life offers quieter versions of these betrayals all the time. The story encourages readers to advocate for themselves and their loved ones, to question inconsistencies, and to remember that trust should never be blind. Transparency is not a threat to love, it is the foundation of it. But perhaps the greatest lesson of all is the enduring strength of love, real love, not the distorted version Evelyn practiced. Amanda and Margaret lost years, but their reunion shows that love can survive absence, lies, and even coarse silence. Real love is resilient. It doesn't evaporate when denied, it waits, it hopes, it anchors itself in truth. Love rebuilt their world when everything else had fallen apart. And that love taught Amanda something she had forgotten, that life is not measured by success or wealth, but by the people whose hands we hold during the darkest storms. In the end, the story teaches that truth heals, love endures, and resilience is born in the broken places of our lives. It urges us to confront what scares us, protect what matters, and never let someone else decide which truths we are strong enough to face. And above all, it reminds us that even after betrayal, loss, and manipulation, life offers us chances to rebuild not the life we lost, but the life we deserve. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss upcoming videos. If you have any suggestions or questions, Feel free to leave a comment below. I'd really love to hear your feedback. Thank you for watching until the end.